the micro trax. Hi and welcome to Climbing Focus. My name is Fiona and we're going to be looking at some top rope solo accidents today and just see what we can learn and hopefully not let it happen to you. Top rope soloing has become very popular in recent years. I have been top rope soloing myself for about 15 years. I started when I used to go ice climbing, and primarily I only top rope solos when I ice climbed in the Uray Ice Park. It was an easy way for me to get laps in the park, and it's a very good setup if ever you've been to Uray Ice Park. There's great anchors. You can lower down, rappel off a rope and climb right back up it, and then move the anchor and then come back down and do it again. So it's a great setup for top rope soloing. It's better to climb with friends, always, because if something goes wrong, there's going to be other people around to help. So that is one of the huge downsides of top rope soloing. So what is top rope soloing? It is the process of being able to climb alone. It's not leading. You will still need to get the rope to the top. You can lead rope solo. This is a Ren soloist. It lives on your chest. When you climb, the rope runs over your shoulder into the device, back up to protection, and then down to an anchor. So the whole system is kind of flipped, and it allows you to lead rope solo. But we're not going to talk about lead rope solo. I do have a video on my other channel, Fiona versus Gravity. If you want to look at that, there is a little video of me placing some gear and going up like a 5.7. What we'll be looking at is top rope solo gear. So the thing I used for years and years is this little beauty here. This is just a regular ascender. And you put it on, you put the rope in here, you clip it on, and this thing lives against your chest again. And as you climb up, the rope has a little bit of weight to it to keep it still. And as you climb up, this thing will move with you. And the teeth that are inside here on the cam, just in here, like that, they are going to catch you if you fall. Now this one has an obvious problem, is that if you screw up, it's easy for it to come undone. In recent years, it's become popular to use a device like this. This is the micro traction. This is the Edelrid Spock. Each of these devices are used in top rope solo. The nice thing about this is when you put the rope in and do it up, and you put a locker on there, it can't come off the rope. It is on the rope. You keep this attached to you. It is important that they stay oriented the right way. So that's kind of important. There are methods for keeping that there. There are certain products you can buy that will keep it there. I personally use a chest harness. And we'll circle back to that at the end of the video, and I'll show you how I use my chest harness to keep this in place. It's also recommended that you use a carabiner that can also stay oriented. So this one has a little gate that's going to keep it positioned on my harness correctly. Now, full disclosure, these, I have two, one for each, the Spock and the Edelrid. These are brand spanking new, and I have never used them. I haven't top rope solo in a little while, but it is ice climbing season. And normally I would be in Uray round about now, getting ready for another weekend of ice climbing. But I have friends now, so I've made some friends to go ice climbing with. So we're making plans to go out together, so I don't need to top rope solo. So, top rope soloing accidents. They happen. They're actually quite rare. Like if you look at the accident reports that you can find, there's going to be a lot of accidents that involve rappelling off the end of the rope. That's very common, unfortunately. People are finally getting the message: tie a knot in the end of your rope. Always make it part of your buddy checks. Even in the gym, just get in the habit of always tying that knot into the end of the rope. So our first incident that we'll look at today is someone who was climbing in Sequoia National Park, and they fell 30 feet to the ground. Now, people generally top rope solo either on a project they're working on or something that they're very comfortable on. In this case, the route was Valkyrie. It's a grade 4, 511 plus at 2,200 feet. The grade 4, the IV, Roman numerals 4, is an alpine rating for how serious it is. So if it's a grade 2, there'll be a hike in, and there may not be a lot of people around, and a rescue might take several hours to get a crew into you to get you out. Grade 4 is pretty serious. It's wilderness, it's backcountry. So as you start moving further into the backcountry and take on more seriousness, the Roman numeral grade will go up. So this is a 2,200 foot alpine climb. It's pretty far back into the park. It's pretty serious. It gets a grade 4. So you're not going to be taking a 511 plus climb on in a grade 4 condition unless you're pretty experienced, typically. So these two climbers were experienced, clearly, and the leader had already led up the route on their own. So they had led soloed up using a gree, which is another technique. And their partner had planned to second the route using a top rope solo device. So the leader was going to tie the rope off and then they would come up to the first anchor. That way the two climbers could be completely independent of each other. This wouldn't be appropriate on something that either climber found difficult, but the first pitch of Valkyrie is 5-8. Now when the leader went up, the rope kind of zigzagged around, and that left a problem for the seconder, that following that zigzag on a top rope solo was proving to be difficult. So they decided to jug up the rope for the first few feet, like the first 30 feet, before they could get out of that zigzag and then start climbing the route themselves and finish up to the anchor. So the scenario is an experienced climber on terrain that is easy for them and just making a decision to use an ascender to ascend the rope. They decided to only use one device. They were having a casual day, they were feeling very comfortable, and so they just decided to use a single device. So the problem they encountered was when the sling that they had positioned around their neck to keep their device upright, they had used a spectra sling that was probably around 10 millimeters. So that fits in just about perfectly into a micro traction or an Edelrid Spock. And the problem came when this device sucked in, it was a micro traction, so I'll show you on that. It sucked in the device, in the sling, and ended up in here, like that. The problem with that is if the rope is between the cam there's nothing now holding the rope and it's just going to slide down. So the device attaches to the rope by coming apart, lifting up the cam, the rope goes in, and then you close it, and then when you drop the cam, it can only slide one way and it can't slide back. And then when you put a carabiner in there, you can see this is going to let you climb up the rope but not down the rope like that. So the problem occurred when the sling got caught in the device. Once that got in there, the cam was no longer able to bite down onto the rope. And so the rope not only moves the way it should move, it also can slide freely back. And so once that was jammed in, there was nothing preventing the climber from falling. And any attempt to pull that sling out to free it is just going to catch on the teeth of the cam. The poor climber ended up falling down to the ground, about 30 feet. So they landed on sloping ground and they fell into bushes, which helped to break their fall. So they were lucky and they got away with minor injuries. They were able to clear any spinal injuries. The fall had resulted in a badly swollen ankle, preventing the victim from walking. They sat there for half an hour, gathered up all their things. They were about 16 miles in, so self-rescue just wasn't going to be an option for them. So they butt scooted down from the crag to be able to get to a point where they were able to call for help and have a rescue by helicopter. So what are the takeaways from our first incident? A single device when you're top rope soloing is not a good idea. There are so many options now. When I started top rope soloing, there really wasn't that many options. Another really nice use of these type of devices is if you have to do a Tyrolean traverse. As you pull up, it's quite hard to get out of the riverbed as you're pulling up to the other side. You hang down, the Tyrolean does this. As you pull up, a pulley wants to slide back. So with a progress capture pulley, you can pull up and it locks and yank and shake your hands out, yank and yank and yank, and get yourself up to the exit point off the Tyrolean. So I have one for me and one for my partner if they don't have one. I always felt a little selfish because I always had one. So one of the things we can do to make ourselves a little safer as we climb is to use backup knots. So as you climb up, this is going to be sliding up. And should it fail, it's going to collapse all the way down. But if there's a knot below the device, then this can slide down only as far as the last knot that you tied. A simple way to tie a backup knot, you twist the rope, you reach down, and you pull a loop through. This creates a hitch. So should the device fail, it'll only go as far as the knot. So one of the problems is they have the weight of the rope pulling down which can undo the slippery hitch. So if you just pull down, it's just going to pop out. So one of the fixes for that, again, just to tie that knot, you just twist it, reach down, pull it through, and pull it tight. Just like that. So you can clip this with a carabiner as well. So if you have a quick draw or a carabiner on your harness, you can clip that into there, and that's going to prevent it from undoing. It's important that you have that loop set, so if you pull down on the knot, it does not undo. If you tie it upside down and you pull down on the knot, it starts to undo. You can use one device, providing you commit to tying backup knots. A smarter plan would be to have a second device and backup knots on each of the devices, ideally on separate ropes. So most crags are going to be half a rope length per pitch. So you have a 200-foot rope, 220-foot, 70-meter. You're going to go 100 feet up and have that rope doubled over to rappel back down. So what you can do is go up to the top, tie that rope off, clip it into the anchor. If you wanted to, you could do 2 separate tie-off points and have them independent, just connected, and then 2 separate ropes hanging down, and put one device on each rope and tie backup knots on each one periodically as you go up. And that is going to give you pretty good protection. To have 2 devices fail that both had backup knots that were clipped in with carabiners, if that goes wrong and you die, that was your day. Sorry. So the climber was using a chest harness, but it was the point of failure. So maybe a different design of chest harness might be a better idea. My preferred chest harness is super simple. I get a single sling. I have the bar tag, the stitching positioned in the middle, and I put one twist. I put my hands through, flip it over like this. So I have a cross in the back. Pull up one side till it's reasonably snug. Ideally, you're going to use like an HMS carabiner, the type that are more triangular. Like, see, this one is pretty triangular. I like this one for this because it gives 2 corners, and you'll see why in a second. The easy way to snug it up is to just pull this up until it's reasonably comfortable on one side, and you have a big loop on the other, and then just twist it. So just run my finger through, keep twisting until it's comfortably snug on the other side, not uncomfortable, just not sloppy. So that's in there. And then I'm going to clip back to the original side. Now, of course, this is way off center, so that's not what I want. I want this chest harness to have an attachment point in the middle. So the easy thing to do then is just twist back the other way until you undo some of the twists on one side, transfer them to the other. It's kind of even that up. There it is. And then turn it to orient my harness, my chest harness. So it's like this. So you can see on these kind of triangular HMS carabiners, they're called pear-shaped, but this one is more triangular. And I really like it for that because it gives those corners of the triangle. It's very easy. It's not going to fall off my shoulders. It takes hardly any time to put on or take off. It's nice and quick. There's no knots in it, so knots weaken slings, but also they're hard to undo. So this doesn't have anything that's difficult to undo at the end of the day. Particularly again in the ice park when your hands are cold and you don't want to take gloves off. I don't need to take gloves off to rig this or take it off. For a multitude of reasons, this is my preferred method of chest harness. It's quick, simple, and convenient. And because it's simple, it's harder to make a mistake. So I think maybe something that perhaps contributed to the accident was just feeling very comfortable on the grade and causing a little bit of complacency. Complacency, I think, is a factor in a lot of climbing accidents. Really good climbers have died very, very often on grades that are well below their ability. So just because you're a strong climber and you're on something that you think is easy terrain, try not to switch off. It's very easy for us to switch off, but we need to stay focused, particularly on terrain that is not spiking our adrenaline or stressing us out. That's the time to just remind ourselves to stay focused. Wear a helmet. This climber was wearing a helmet and probably it saved their life. So we have another incident using a top rope solo that we're going to look at as well. That happened this time. The climber fell 50 feet. They were climbing in California. The name of the crag was the Snowshed Wall in California. This unfortunate climber fell and broke their ankle, similar to the last one. They fell 50 feet. They were on a kind of an overhanging, very hard climb. They fell, and just before they hit the ground, their foot impacted the rock, and this caused the device to re-engage, saving their life. Now, this is a bit different. The first incident had a sling that jammed, but this one doesn't have a sling there. The reason it failed is a bit of a mystery. One of the theories was that it was loaded sideways because they were doing a move that involved kind of lie backing. And even though the rope was weighted, it didn't quite engage correctly. And as it fell, the cam wasn't able to bite. And we're not quite sure why that happened. There has been campfire stories of this kind of thing happening. But as far as I know, no one's been able to reproduce exactly what went wrong for this guy. A mystery failure of a micro traction is a very good reason to use a backup device. This climber usually used a backup device. They had climbed with a micro trax as a backup, using a Trango cinch as well. So using two devices was their usual standard backup. The day had got cold. Most of the climbers had left. It was windy. People were packing up. A lot of people had left. They decided to do another climb. Before they left, a climb they had done before multiple times. They had already climbed several routes that day using this system. So they were good. There was no reason for them to think that their system would fail. But because it was windy, they decided not to use a second rope as a backup, because the Trango cinch requires that it is not weighted. So when it failed, they didn't have a backup and they almost hit the ground. Thankfully, it re-engaged right before they hit the ground, like 3 feet above the ground. They still broke their ankle from the impact, but really it could have been an awful lot worse for them. One of the factors was a lot of people had left the crag. If everyone had left the crag and they had decided just to stay and keep climbing, and this happened, it would have been very, very hard for them to get away. If you have a satellite messenger, then you can call for help. But if your cell phone is in your bag and it's 50 feet away or 20 feet away, and you were just kind of shifting over real quick to do one more quick run, which totally could happen because you build a little nest of all your gear, you run up, you do your climbs, and then you're at the top on top rope solo, you might just hop across to another anchor at the top or a tree, drop back down, decide to go back up before you go over and wrap down. And so it might be tantalizingly close but out of reach. If they had broken their pelvis, they would not be moving themselves anywhere, and they may be lying there all night until someone comes out the next day. So have your messenger close by. It wouldn't be the worst idea to keep it clipped on, put it in your pocket, or clip it onto the back of your harness, particularly if you're on your own when you're doing rope solos. One of the reasons we top rope solo is to get away and have some peace and quiet and some solitude, but have a method of communication with you while you do these things. If you haven't done a wilderness first aid course, I highly recommend it. One of the things they teach is how to assess someone to see whether you should move or stay. So one of the factors is loss of feeling or loss of circulation. If there is an accident that has caused a lack of circulation, then the clock is ticking for the death of that limb. One thing you can check for this is capillary refill, pressing down on a toenail or on a piece of skin and seeing how the skin recovers. Does it stay white? Does the blood refill into that extremity? You can do a comparison with the other side and see what a healthy, uninjured limb looks like. It's always good to compare on the victim rather than on somebody else, because we all have different kind of metabolisms and circulation. So in the world of first aid, it's called the CSM: circulation, sensation, and movement. Is there circulation? Doing the capillary refill, is there circulation? Is there sensation? Can they feel it? One test you can do with this is if you have something like 2 sticks, you can put them close to each other and touch the 2 sticks together and ask how many they feel. The movement is the last one. If they can move, how much movement do they have? Is it full free range of movement, or is it a restricted movement? So this is the kind of information that it's very useful to a mountain rescue team when you make that call, to let them know how serious this is and what their response time needs to be. Do they need to get out there quickly and get you out of there? Do they need to call in a helicopter to get you out to save your limb and possibly your life? The blood in a non-circulating limb can become toxic, and should it then start circulating, it can kill the victim. With top rope soloing, there is always going to be a certain amount of risk that we accept, but it's also going to allow us to climb. And we're climbers, we accept risk. Risk management is kind of comes with the territory. So a backup knot costs nothing. It takes a second to tie. And even if you're not going to clip it off, it could save your life. One backup knot, 10 feet off the ground, at least. Just do one of those, and that's going to stop you impacting the ground. That should be your absolute barest minimum if you're only going to use a single device. Even if you use 2 devices, still tie backup knots. Sometimes there has been stories of one device falling onto the other and causing it to fail. Cammed device is being used as a secondary backup, and then the microtraction falls, hits the cam, holds the cam open, and down you go. Simple backup knot, takes 2 seconds to tie. It might save your life. So just taking that simple precaution It's going to help a lot. And of course, everyone who climbs should be doing wilderness first aid, because you just never know when something's going to happen to you, to your friends, or someone else. I unfortunately have seen a lot of first aid issues over the years. You climb long enough, you will see something happen, from minor accidents in gym where a guy was belaying from too far away, belaying his lead buddy who took a pretty good fall, and he went slamming into the wall and broke his ankle, like right in front of us. I've seen people dropped in gyms and break legs, boulderers hit the ground and break their legs as well. And I've seen a lot of stuff. And it's one of the reasons I want to do this podcast and have you guys learn a little bit about what can go wrong, not from a morbid fascination point of view, but I want you guys to just be more safe. I want to learn myself, like researching the topics that I want to cover and the things I want to talk about. Then I get to learn and have you guys double check me as well. Like, you think I'm doing something wrong, tell me. Don't let me go out there and be safe either. That we have each other's backs. So let's try and help each other do better and survive longer. So we're going to take a look at a video of someone using a top rope system. And it's not very clear what's happening, but they do take a fall, and they're using microtraction, and they're using a roll and lock. So that's all good. You can't see if they're tying backup knots in the strand they're on. What's interesting is you can see the microtraction here down low is attached directly to the belay loop, which isn't uncommon to have a short attachment to your backup device and then have an extension up to your primary device to have it a little bit higher, and that provides some separation. So that's fine. But what's interesting is I don't see any connection from this sling here to the harness below. So I think they have a chest harness because someone told them they should use a chest harness, and their upper device should be connected to that chest harness. And when they've done that, they haven't connected to the base. So let me show you how that should be rigged, because this looks pretty sketch. Let's just finish watching the video. Climbing up. Yeah, sure enough, that's the sling that's attached. Pretty sure that's attached around. Like, I'm looking at that shadow. This looks like this is the harness that is just looped around their shoulders. It's taking that fall along with the microtraction. So the two of them got it. So that primary one has gone around his shoulders, and the microtraction is also caught. So some of the weight is on the lower device, some of the weight is on the upper device. And so it's not too uncomfortable. But if that lower device failed and you were entirely on that chest harness, that wouldn't be good. I don't know if you put your hands up like that as you feel this impact and you go, oh my God, it's gonna, off it goes. That'll be stuck up on the rope doing just fine. You, however, will be down on the base with your failed microtraction. So the reason for the chest harness is not to take load. Like, it should be rigged in a way that does not hold any load. It's simply to hold the device up. So I'm going to get my harness on and I'll show you quickly how that works. And I got myself rigged. So that guy in that video, I'm pretty sure, had his microtraction on the rope like that. So when he fell, he caught that and it ended up sitting on his harness. I don't think he had any twists. You can see it kind of has this triangle on that video like that, and it was just coming straight up. So the load for the microtraction should be taken on the harness down here. So we're going to put this in here and it's going to rig up this way. To keep these upright, I need to connect this to the carabiner. Probably the best way to do it is using a small sling. So you're going to put the sling on first, then put this on, and put this on afterwards. Try and get the bar tack out of the way, because bar tack suck. Like that. And then we're going to clip this in here like that. And you can see this is going to create a nice locked in method, and then the rope is going to run up through the microtraction. So while you're walking around, you can just have that rigged here like this. And you can see this is a pretty nice length for me coming down here like that. It works pretty well, keeps it nice and snug. And now I can just attach my micro traction between these two parts of the sling. So I get my micro traction and I put it on the rope and I make sure that the cam is oriented. And I like that little button just for keeping it out of the way while I'm getting myself rigged. Because if I forget to push the button, it's pretty obvious that I do not have that button pushed. So if I push the button, whoop, no, it doesn't fall down anymore. So I want to get myself rigged in here. So I'm going to unclip half of that. So I have it rigged in there for half. Then the micro traction goes on. And then the second loop. And I do that up. So you'll want to tie something to the bottom of this. In the ice park, I usually carry an empty, like a ditty sack, just a little stuff sack. And because it's just empty and scrunches up to nothing, I can just put some blocks of ice in there. Or when I'm climbing, I'll just find a couple of rocks and throw it in there, or a pair of shoes or something like that, just to provide a little bit of weight. I tend not to use my backpack because it does get bashed around a little bit when I throw it in there. So that's it. So now, if I fall, it catches. If I climb, it allows me to ascend as I move up, and it keeps everything oriented in a good position. So it's a really simple setup. It uses slings all the way through. Should it fail, and should this be needed to be actually a real chest harness, yes, it would work. Like I say, you put your arms up and it's just going to slide right off. So in a pinch, it would kind of help. It stops you falling backwards too much, but this one is pretty good that I can still move backwards and work on a route as I go up. So it's real simple. Then the second device clips in. And this one I can use this little retaining clip, and that's going to sit in on this device. It'll rid Spock. There's a little thing there. So instead of a button to hold it up, it's got that little bit of string. And then this one goes on. So that should be sliding up as well. Yep. And that is also going to go on. So now as I climb up, just take that off there. And as I climb up, you can see that the two of them go up. As you fall on that, the primary device is going to lock and transfer the weight into the harness. And this backup device is just going to follow behind. You don't want it to sit over here like this. So having a method for keeping this device in the middle is going to be an advantage. A real simple way of doing that can just be to have rubber bands that sit, but just a bundle of rubber bands either side to keep that device in place. It's going to work pretty well. So there's your primary device catching. This is not taking any load. And as you fall, if this primary device fails, then the secondary device will take over and it will catch as well. And you can see the cam is on the bottom on this one, so it should be relatively protected from any interference from the one above. And that is how you top rope solo. And of course, don't forget to tie your backup knots. As you're climbing, you're going to just reach down below the device, put a loop, grab the tail, up through the loop and pull. It's that easy. And ideally you'll have a carabiner or two with you. You just put through the rope as well. This would be weighted and hanging down, so a little bit easier to work with. And just leave it like that. And that, 10 feet off the ground, is going to save your life. Well, this was my first attempt at doing a podcast without Dean, and I got to say, it was more fun with him. I did have a lot of fun. So he has got swamped with his master's program. So for now, it's going to be me, and we're going to keep trying to do this. And hopefully I get some feedback from you guys and what it is you want to cover and what you want to learn. So I have a subreddit called Climbing Accidents, and it would be really useful if you see anything happen, or if anything happens to you, just post the story of what happened, ideally with where and who you were with and what the details of what went on. Post that stuff so we can all kind of see what happened and we can do an analysis to see what we can learn. So please do post to the subreddit Climbing Accidents. If you want to see any other of the videos, you can always find them on climbingfocus.com. So please take a minute to check that out as well. There should be some other articles that I write when I get a chance. to do that. It takes a long time to do this, and now it's just me doing it, so it's going to take even longer. If you have any questions or comments, please post that. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and comment.